Good evening and welcome to the People's Church Christmas Eve online service. Let us begin with these words of gathering I've adapted from Kendall Gibbons. This year, there is no homemade cookies or hot chocolate to share in the Andre room, no warm hugs or handshakes as we greet old friends. This year, we must make Christmas out of the materials at hand. So, we are gathered online to defy the isolation and the darkness that gnaws at us all the time, coronavirus or not. We are here to bear witness to the fact that community endures even when the Grinch has hijacked all the presents. We are here for each other because of the memories of Christmas Eves past and the promise of Christmas Eves that shall be in years to come. This one is different and special, and yet it does not stand alone. Just as we do not stand alone, it is part of a sequence of the cycling years that we remember and create anew, the heart-lifting illumination of Christmas Eve. As always, we find ways to make music, to make meaning, ways to make merry, and ways to make magic together while apart, so that we might not needlessly risk each other's lives and add more burdens to our overwhelmed healthcare systems. Christmas Eve has always been about the birth of love that overcomes loneliness and oppression both, about the light of hope in the midnight of despair, about ancient promises that finally, unexpectedly come true. It is about a song of peace in a world of violence and strife. This, my friends, is no time to give up on these proclamations. Christmas Eve, as always, is an invitation to double down on a strange and wonderful vision that we all seem to have tucked away somewhere in our practical work-a-day hearts. That this life that we live, in this world that we share, could suddenly bloom into peace on earth and goodwill to all people now on this very night. Or if not that, at least the heavens might blaze with stars and ring with angelic songs, and we might all remember that somewhere a child is being born, which means that this is, without a doubt, a holy night. Come, my dears, let us kindle our lights and pass them from heart to heart, if not hand to hand. Let us lift our voices in the familiar songs of rejoicing for the coming of a new king, a Prince of Peace, who shall save the lost and bring light to the nations. Even now, the flame brightens and the song rises. Hark. Please help me light our chalice by saying the words with me that you see on your screen. On this Christmas Eve, we ignite our chalice flame to cast light into the darkness, to recall the promise of peace, to ignite joy in our hearts, and to proclaim that love is being born this very night. And as we say our affirmation, I invite you to reflect on why we are here. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We're going to continue in song now. We have a couple of carols. First, O Come All You Faithful, and joy to the world. And Kate Scheller is here to sing with me, and you all are warmly invited to sing from home. Our children's story this evening comes to us from the Reverend Laura Thompson, who put together this story, The Virus That Stole Christmas.
Every Who down in Whoville loved Christmas a lot, but the pandemic that spread virus in Whoville did not. The virus hated Christmas and all holiday occasions, so parties were canceled alongside festive persuasions. The virus had come the early spring before with a fear that gripped most folks straight to their core. Schools, churches, and businesses' buildings were closed, but the virus kept spreading as if unopposed. The Who's all stayed steady and followed a path of 6 feet of distance, hand washing, and masks. Hardest of all was the loss of connection from no time together, no hugs or affection. And were groups singing in concerts and carols, to do so was reckless and fraught with great peril. There could be no banquets or fun-filled gatherings. The virus, unfettered, kept right on hammering. But the Who's were resilient, again staying the course. FaceTime, texting, and Zoom were heavily endorsed. They packaged up presents and sent them through mail and dropped food on doorsteps. No contact prevailed. The virus had tried, stealing all the Who's joy through illness and layoffs and sinister ploys. But the Who's came together, sounding their call to care for all Who's, whether big or quite small. And though COVID the virus continued to spread, the Who's down in Whoville did not fill with dread. They held on to hope and comfort and peace. They put out their stockings and altars and wreaths. They sang holiday songs in their family homes, made snowmen, hot cocoa, and wrote winter poems. They called all their friends and found ways to feel near, spreading joy and laughter to loved ones so dear. In a season of hope that was not like most, the Who's found a good way to keep feeling close. Physical distance is measured in feet and in miles, but love transcends distance through gestures and smiles. So Who's, keep your chins up and your hearts full of cheer. COVID won't thwart us as we round out the year. We'll get through and be safe and be well, and years from now, oh, the stories we'll tell of the virus that came for Christmas to steal our joy and our comfort, but we did not yield. We kept dreaming of peace and of love and of hope. We kept keeping safe distance and managed to cope. The darkness will cease and the sun will return. The bells will still ring and the candles will burn. Welcome this season with a heart full of joy. Bring on the eggnog, the Yule logs, and toys. Christmas will come, Hanukkah and solstice too, and we'll ring in the new year, shouting 2020 adieu.
First reading is The Risk of Birth by Madeleine L'Engle. This is no time for a child to be born. With the earth betrayed by war and hate, and a comet slashing the sky to warn that time runs out and the sun burns late. That was no time for a child to be born in a land of the crushing grip of Rome. Honor and truth were trampled by scorn, yet here did the Savior make his home. When is the time for love to be born? The inn is full on the planet Earth, and by a comet the sky is torn. Yet love still takes the risk of birth. And the second reading is from the Gospel according to Luke. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those whom he favors." When the angels had left and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told to them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had seen and heard as it had been told them. And now please join Rebecca and I in a couple of more carols, Away in the Manger and The First Noel. Our next reading is The Refugees by Ann Weems. Into the wild and painful cold of the starless winter night came the refugees, slowly making their way to the border. The man, stooped from age or anxiety, hurried his small family through the wind. Bearded and dark, his skin rough and cracked from the cold, his frame looming large in spite of the slumped shoulders. He looked like a man who could take care of whatever came at them from the dark, unless, of course, there were too many of them. One man he could handle, two even, but a border patrol? They wouldn't have a chance. His eyes, black and alert, darted from side to side, then over his shoulder, then back again forward. Had they been seen? Had they been heard? Every rustle of the wind, every sigh from the child sent terror through his chest. Was this the way? Even the stars had been unkind, had hidden themselves in the ink of night so that the man could not read their way. Only the wind. Was it enough? Only the wind and his innate sense of direction. What kind of cruel judgment that would be, to wander in circles through the night, or to safely make their way to the border, only to find the authorities waiting for them. He glanced at the young woman, his bride. No more than a child herself, she nuzzled the newborn, kissing his neck. She looked up, caught his eye, and smiled. Oh, how the homelessness had taken its toll on her. Her eyes were red, her young face was lined, her lovely hair matted from inattention, her clothes stained from milk and baby, her hands chapped from the raw wind of winter. She'd hardly had time to recover from childbirth when word had come that they were hunted, and they fled with only a little bread and the remaining wine and a very small portion of cheese. Suddenly, the child began to make small noises. The man drew his breath in sharply. The woman quietly put the child to breast. Fear, long, dread-filled moments. Huddled, the family stood in the long silence. At last, the man breathed again, reassured that they had not been heard, and into the night continued Mary, Joseph, and the babe.
Ever since I can remember, Christmas arrives each year with its merry twinkling lights, delicious, abundant baked goods, and rich, cozy cups of hot chocolate, and all that holiday cheer tied up in a lovely Christmas bow. And I love it. As Julie Enders once sang, these are some of my favorite things. We have traditions and rituals that we're used to at Christmas time, and we're used to Christmas coming into our world each December, right down a familiar, well-worn path, right down Santa Claus Lane, the whole affair well-rehearsed and well-loved. But this year, of course, is different. We haven't been down this road before. I don't know about you, but I don't quite know how to celebrate Christmas in a global pandemic. And furthermore, I don't particularly like it. I don't like the fact that I'm here right now in an empty sanctuary preaching into a tiny camera, not the faces of my beloved community. I don't like the fact that tonight I won't be able to hug all of you and wish you a hearty Merry Christmas in person. And I don't like that this year I'll be missing out on the time-honored family traditions I'm used to, as my little family stays home instead of attending our usual extended family gathering. But like it or not, ready or not, Christmas is coming into our world tonight Love is being born in this very moment. I know there is comfort and familiarity in the holiday routines and traditions we as a community and in our families have come to love. There is joy in all the preparation that goes into the holidays, and I hope you have that this year. Lord knows we need some joy in this world. But I've been wondering this year about that very first Christmas. On the night Jesus was first born, was the world ready? Was it prepared? Was it all tied up in a shiny bow, ready to go? We are so used to polishing up the Christmas story and approaching it with our familiar understandings of what it means and how to experience it. But that first Christmas, the world wasn't prepared. The world wasn't dusted off and sparkling. The world was full of suffering and heartache, political turmoil and despair, and it came anyway. Christmas came into the world as it was, not as we would like it to be, like it or not. Jesus was born into a raw, weary world to parents in poverty on the run who had virtually nothing but their love for one another to keep them going. There was no room for them in the inn, no place to lay down and dream of sugar plums, no food for them to eat, no Christmas kringle or hoo hash, no support system of friends and family around them, nothing but the tender cries of a babe in a lowly manger and a slow blink of a star in the east. Nevertheless, news traveled fast of this birth, and the story spread across the ancient world and across history. Today, the Christmas story is perhaps the most well-known story in the world. It's familiar and comforting. We know how it goes, what happened, and who was there. As a matter of fact, we have bins full of Christmas pageant costumes downstairs in this very church that we use when we tell the story when we're together in person. It's a good story. It wraps around us like a soft, warm blanket, and we can feel sure of it. Sure that Jesus is the Son of God, the Prince of Peace, the light of the world, and all shall be well. Sue Monk Kidd published a novel this year called The Book of Longings. It's a work of fiction which tells the story of Jesus from the perspective of a woman named Anna. The author creates the character of Anna with stunning attention to historical detail, and yet she is fictional. She is the made-up sister of Judas in the novel and the wife of Jesus. Through the character of Anna, Sue Monk Kidd gives us an intimate look at the life and death of Jesus with an emphasis on his humanity. In the novel, Jesus doesn't know if he's the Son of God. He doesn't know if he is the King of the Jews. And he spends a lot of difficult, prayerful time in connection with the holy, with God, trying to work out who he is and what he is called to on this earth, much like all of us. I read this novel with great enthusiasm because it complicated the story for me. It unraveled it. It portrayed Jesus as a real human being with real questions about his identity and purpose. It reminded me all over again that Jesus was fully human, and therefore his life was messy. His circumstances, life in first century Palestine, were chaotic, full of political strife and unrest, much like life today in our modern world. People at the time were not treated fairly. Women were, the poor were outcast, the sick ignored. Kings and political rulers were power hungry and ruthless. And this is the world that Jesus came into. A fully human being in a fully human world. Some believe Jesus was also fully divine at the same time, a matter that was settled for the Christian church in the 4th century at the Council of Nicaea. For Christians, God put on human skin and became fully human by choice. Can you imagine? By choice. God chose to be born on earth, not to some wealthy family, but in a lowly manger, into dire circumstances. Either way, whatever you believe or don't believe, it remains true that Jesus came into the world as it was, and that his birth, life, and death changed history and humanity. And so it is this year. Christmas is coming into the world just as it is, not as we want it to be. Even if our lives and the rest of the world are not shiny or perfect, it is coming, even if we are not ready, like it or not. In the Book of Longings, Anna says, "I went to stand beside him and looked in the same direction as he. And it seemed for an instant I saw the world as he did, orphaned and broken and staggeringly beautiful, a thing to be held and put back right." This is my Christmas wish this year, that we could see the world as Jesus did, orphaned and broken and staggeringly beautiful, a thing to be held and put back right. It's been a difficult year. A lot of things got broken and lost, and the world is beautiful. And it is time to put things back right. So as we celebrate Christmas this year, let it be with a renewed commitment to being fully human and fully present in the world as it is. Let it be with a commitment to personal wellness and communal salvation. As Anna's aunt says to her at one point when things are going rather poorly, in a tough moment, she says to her niece, "All shall be well." I don't mean that life won't bring you tragedy. I only mean you will be well in spite of it. There's a place in you that is inviolate. You'll find your way there when you need to, and you'll know then what I speak of. We all know 2020 was rough. There is much work to be done to heal and manifest peace on earth. But let Christmas remind us that all will be well. All will be put back right in spite of the tragedy. For something new is being born right now, within us, among us, and beyond us. Peace is coming into the world. Love is being born this very night. Let us rejoice and be glad. May this be so. May we be the ones to make it so. We're going to keep on singing. It came upon a midnight clear, and angels we have heard on high.
Each year on Christmas Eve, we take up a special collection for the minister's discretionary fund. This fund makes a great difference in the lives of people we know and care about, helping people make ends meet, pay rent and utilities, access food, and pay medical bills. This year, as we come to the end of 2020, we know all too well that each one of us is vulnerable to financial distress and but one health crisis away from needing support ourselves. And yet, we also know that none of us has to face hardship alone. At People's Church, we take care of one another. If you are in need this holiday season, please know that you are loved and help is available. Simply contact Reverend Rebecca and she can confidentially get you the assistance you need. If you are in a position to give this year, this is your chance. Please donate now by sending a check in the mail to us with Minister's Discretionary Fund in the memo line, going to the Donate Now button on our website and selecting Minister's Discretionary Fund in the drop-down menu, or using the Give Plus app on your smartphone. The Christmas Eve offering will now be gratefully given and received.
Thank you, Judy. That was gorgeous. At this time, I'd like to invite you to get out your candle, and you may have gotten one of these in the mail, or you may get any kind of candle that you have in your home. And we're going to light these now and pass the flame heart to heart. So I invite you to light your candle at home and join me in centering our hearts and minds on the words of Howard Thurman. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to make music in the heart.